if you're just being an honest, reasonable person, then you just have to admit that, okay, I'm talking about an immigration policy. I'm not talking about any people. G'day and God bless. My name is Raymond Foster. I'm an independent Australian politician, currently running for a seat in the Senate for Queensland. In running for a seat in the Senate for Queensland and starting a political campaign, I was faced with a level of tyranny that was unexpected, a level of corruption within our system. Fundamentally, I was arrested and charged for literally starting a political campaign and running as a senator. This political campaign and activity, which is protected constitutional rights of all citizens of the Australian Commonwealth, apparently, allegedly, is offensive.
My political opponents had me arrested, which is actually a crime, but they don't care. It's political interference. They had me arrested because I'm running in politics and they disagree with what I have to say. And they're anti-white. It's a crime. Apparently me running in politics is a crime because my political campaign is quote-unquote offensive. My political campaign, my political positions, my political beliefs, my ideology, etc. is apparently offensive to somebody else. Oh my, like, come on. Anyone with a brain understands that obviously everybody's political position, doesn't matter who you are, if you're running politics, you're offending somebody, yeah? So just because I'm running in politics, doesn't matter what my stance is, somebody who has the opposite stance is going to be offended, yeah? But they want to silence me and not allow me to run in politics by arresting me and saying my political campaign is quote-unquote offensive. So we all know what this is. This is like Stasi silencing of political opponents and political opposition.
Because the anti-whites haven't said it's legitimate. And I said, boy, you know what? I know you went to Harvard. But I'm thinking pragmatically here. You know what? If we're playing by their rules.
That Bravo Sierra. That Bravo Sierra. That Bravo Sierra.
They say that they're anti-racist, but what they really are is anti-white. Think about it.
To recap, our story begins late in the year of 2019. It is in this time, between around September and October, that I started my political campaign where I call out anti-whiteism and address the criminal nature of the promotion of biological white erasure. In response to this, within only a couple of weeks, I was raided and arrested for the alleged crime of, open quote, using a carriage service to cause offence, close quote. During my arrest, I was given the specific bail conditions stating that I legally cannot access and use my political campaign pages online. At this time, individual posts on my Facebook campaign page, for example, were reaching up to 14,000 people at a time. Some posts reaching close to 20,000 people at a time. Each individual post. And yet, within only a couple of weeks, I was effectively silenced and I was unable to continue my political campaign due to, again, the specific bail conditions hindering me from partaking in the political discourse. And again, this was orchestrated by my political opponents, who are anti-whites. My first court appearance, if I remember correctly, was again not long after, in late 2019. Although the courts and the judges kept adjourning the case multiple times, and it ended up lasting well over a year. So it just kept getting adjourned and adjourned and adjourned for well over a year. Again, with these bail conditions in place, hindering my ability from partaking in the political discourse on my campaign pages. Last week, which was the end of June 2021, the case was finally put through the court. For the first 3 hours, it was just slander from prosecution and lies. And then, a key witness was actually exposed lying in the witness box. And the judge's response was that apparently this isn't relevant and that I need to stop asking such questions. This was followed by hours of evidence being presented and misinterpreted purposely in order to try to frame me as a baddie from the anti-white narrative, using specific anti-white slurs like racist and white supremacist, etc. Court finished and we went home without a decision being made that day. A decision was made yesterday on the 1st of July 2021. And that decision was, according to the judge of the case, or overseeing the case, that I am allegedly guilty. And the reasoning that the judge gave for me being guilty were actual lies and, again, misinterpretations of the presented evidence and allegations and racial slurs such as me being racist. So because I'm quote-unquote racist, this anti-white racial slur used by anti-white bigots, that's why I'm quote-unquote allegedly guilty. And specifically because the reason I am quote-unquote racist, according to the judge, in the judge's decision again, is because I targeted and talked down and was demeaning towards non-whites, allegedly, when I was specifically speaking about anti-whites of all races, and that's clear in the evidence. And even though the parameters in which the judge has to work within to actually find me guilty, alright, following proper procedure, is they have to prove without a shadow of a doubt, alright, prove 100% without a doubt that, one, my political communication is offensive to all reasonable people in all circumstances, and it was due to me being reckless. Yet, even though there is this standard of the court having to, so again, it's innocent until proven guilty, the court has, and prosecution has to prove without a doubt, with the evidence, solid evidence, physical evidence, that you are indeed guilty. Yet the decision of the judge for my case was not related to the evidence presented in the case. So that there is no connection there. There is no proper procedure being made where evidence is showing without a doubt that I am, quote unquote, allegedly guilty. Instead, there is evidence presented where I'm talking about anti-whites and anti-whiteism, and not once do I speak negatively or down about non-whites at all, or any other group of people. Yet the judge makes the leap and paints me as the bad guy in the anti-white narrative, and says that I'm a racist, and says and lies in their decision, and says that, again, lies that I am talking down against non-whites, and then uses that as the justification to slander me with the anti-white slur of racist, which then apparently is justification to say that I'm offensive to, quote-unquote, reasonable person. Fundamentally, a kangaroo court. I have been, quote-unquote, allegedly found guilty for being, quote-unquote, offensive.
It's just in there for 3 hours. Sitting there for 3 blooming hours, right? And we just started getting to the legitimate evidence. The evidence that I was given in the briefer evidence. So we've been sitting in there for 3 hours, and it's just been slander. Anti-white slander. Lies from prosecution.
Although, in order for the court to find me guilty of being offensive, they had to, as they say, hop over a few norms and evidence and etc., etc. It's just at the whim of the judge and those involved. They just make it up as they go along. They don't follow any rules. They ignore when rules are broken by those whom are participating in their corruption and their lies.
Lies from folk in the witness box. Folk even catching them like biting their tongue and then in the witness box lying. But the judge is like, no, it's alright, that's alright. It's not related. Like, you got to ask questions that are related, Raymond. How is it not related that we just saw him lie? I just exposed him lying in the witness box, and apparently that's not related to that witness's statement in my court case. So apparently the legitimacy of a witness's statement, the truth or not of their statement, when you expose them and catch them out lying in front of the judge in the witness box, doesn't have any sway whatsoever on how, legitimately the truth is taken to be of the statement of the individual giving that witness. They're lying in the witness box, but let's believe what they have to say. And you shut up, Raymond. Stop asking those questions that are exposing his lies. Justice. Good old justice. Eh? Oh, really? That's corrupt as.
And then the judge even went as far as lying in her decision in order to frame me as guilty.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Foster, it's your opportunity now to make a closing submission.
Thank you, Your Honour. I'd like to submit first off that nowhere at all in any of the videos or anything is there anywhere of me talking down or against any other race of people. That's just slander. I clearly make the point. I'm talking about anti-whites and the ideology of anti-whiteism, which is a hatred of members of Western kind. So trying to spin and slander as if I was being degrading towards non-whites when I'm using certain words and things and descriptors. It's just a blatant lie and slander. I'm specifically talking about anti-whites. Even in the video from February, I make that very clear, that it's all about anti-whites.
And if it's either you're pro-white or you're white positive, you're for the well-being of white people, or you're against it, and that's anti-white. And that's the only thing I have a problem with. No other race of people. So that's just nonsense, made up slander. Simply because I am a white man who doesn't have guilt, and I do care about my people. Yeah, where I said if somebody tries to charge me with hate speech, etc., and prosecution's trying to imply that this means that I knew that I was going to be offensive, when I clearly made the point, and I'll make it again, that I understand that I would be persecuted by anti-whites and an anti-white system, anti-white sentiment. That's nothing to do with being offensive to a reasonable person. In fact, in that same video in February, I specifically stated, that video called Am I Racist?, that we all watched, I specifically said, when the individual asking the question said, oh, okay, you're not. That makes perfect sense. You're just not against white people. Fair enough, you're not a racist. I said, and I was surprised because that was really reasonable. So I made the distinction quite clear even back in February that people who agree with me, I feel are reasonable, and the only people disagreeing, who would find it potentially find it offensive, are unreasonable, anti-white bigots who hate actual race of people on the basis of their race. I don't think anyone here would agree that people who have racially discriminate on the basis of somebody's race is a reasonable person. So using anti-whites as an example of reasonable people who are offended by my apparent political free speech, protected by our Constitution, that Anzacs fought and died for, they're admitting that they just have anti-white intent. That in no way illustrates me not understanding the situation, or acting recklessly and causing offence, or having any reckless assumption or inclination that I may cause offence. No, I knew from the get-go, even back in February in that video, I said clearly, I am not going to cause any offence to any reasonable person, because all the reasonable people are agreeing with me. In Exhibit 2 here, where this individual attacks me for my political ideology and stance.
That person, are you referring to the K?
Yeah, K, and they say purveyor of racism and bigotry. And they attack me with this slur and slander. You can see right underneath it, and this is on the 10th of October, days before the last release, where apparently I was reckless and I assumed I was going to offend people but did it anyway. Days before this, I clearly say to this individual, racist is just an anti-white slur. Using derogatory insults like that because you disagree with my policies on stopping genocide is the literal definition of bigotry. And then I have there quoted from the dictionary, bigot, noun, bigot, a person who is intolerant towards those holding different opinions. So this person's attacked me in my political campaign page with racial slurs, like racist, simply because of the colour of my skin. This illustrates everything that I've been saying, that it's only unreasonable anti-whites who attack people from a position of racial discrimination who are even finding what I have to say offensive. That's all I have to submit, Your Honour. Thank you.
There are a couple of things we can learn from this situation. Firstly, it doesn't matter what the law is, etc., what's right or wrong. At the end of the day, it comes down to who's anti-white and who's not. And so we can see in this situation, even though in a proper court procedure there's supposed to be solid evidence proving guilt, the judge has decided to simply lie and add in falsities to frame me with guilt. And again, this is because the judge is clearly anti-white. They even decided to use anti-white meme pathogens as pretexts as the lie, to then justify using the anti-white meme pathogen and slander, calling me a racist, to then justify me being the bad guy in the anti-white narrative, to try to justify me being quote-unquote guilty. That's the first thing we can take away from this and learn from this, is that No matter what, no matter how innocent you are, no matter how nice you are, no matter how right you are, okay, how justified you are, in the eyes of anti-whites, they will always try to justify you as the bad guy in the anti-white narrative, and thus try to moralize their own victimization of Western kind and their own anti-white hatred. Anti-whites, if they're anti-white, they're anti-white. They're blind to reality, and they're just going to hate you and call you a racist, and again try to paint you as the baddie in the anti-white narrative. Okay? And they'll even lie to do it. But now let's look at what the lie was, and from my own assumption, okay, I can't read the judge's mind, but I can assume from understanding anti-whiteism and how anti-whites generally function and interactions with anti-whites, etc. Okay, and anecdotal evidence that I've gathered from just those interactions, I can assume, and my estimation would be that the judge has tried to use the lie, and it thinks that they can get away with and justify using the lie of saying that I was degrading towards non-whites, because I did use the phrase non-white immigration. I never spoke about actual non-whites or any group of people or anything like this, but I did say non-white immigration. I did talk about immigration policy, and immigration policy directly in regards to ethnicity. But I didn't talk about any ethnicity itself or any group or any individual, okay? No migrant or anything like this. So I didn't talk about migrants, I talked about migration, the political policies. Yet, because I have mentioned non-white immigration, the judge has thought they can get away with, and it's okay, they can try to justify lying and saying that that's me talking negatively about non-whites, even though any reasonable person who understands basic English can accept, if they're not being disingenuous, they're not trying to be anti-white and slander me and frame me as the bad guy in the anti-white narrative to justify their own anti-white abuse and hatred, okay, and promotion of white erasure. If they're just being an honest, reasonable person, okay, then you just have to admit that, okay, I'm talking about an immigration policy. I'm not talking about any people. Yes, I'm talking about ethnicity in regards to immigration policy, but I'm talking about legislation and politics. I'm not talking about any group of people here. I'm not being hateful or negative or derogatory towards any group of non-whites at all, or any individual non-white. And all honest people have to accept that as the reality. Only anti-whites would try to make that extra spin, that hop like a kangaroo, especially in a court. It's very kangaroo-like to make that hop and ignore evidence in the actual case and just make that added on slander, and say that, when I'm talking about immigration policies and politics and legislation and laws, that somehow I'm actually talking about people, living beings, and being negative towards these living beings in some way. Therefore, I'm, quote-unquote, the anti-white slur of a racist, and therefore guilty. Again, that was the court or the judge's decision. That's what she has said herself in her decision as how she justifies and found me guilty. It's because of her own kangaroo hop, alright, that she admits from jumping to the assumption, okay, the lie, the slander, that I'm being degrading towards non-whites when I'm talking about immigration policies. Again, all honest people, just straightforward. Obviously, I'm not talking about people or any individual or any group. I'm talking about the laws in regards to groups of people. So I'm not talking down about any group of people. I'm not being quote-unquote racist. I'm not being derogatory. That is all anti-white slander, anti-white defamation. And where is it coming from? Again, it always keeps coming from my political opponents who are anti-whites, who are trying to censor me and shut me out and silence me from being able to partake in my constitutional right to political communication and discourse within our free democracy. And so our second takeaway, or second lesson from this, at least for myself, and I think others should consider it, just to avoid the same type of situations and slander and defamation, but I'm going to try to remember to, in future, when speaking about such immigration policies, refer to them upfront and generally as anti-white immigration policies. So that at least negates some of the anti-whites' ability to actively slander and defame and try to paint us as baddie in the anti-white narrative. And it's just when we want to be specific, or at least for myself, this is what I'm going to do, when I want to be specific about what I mean exactly by anti-white immigration, I'll go into it and speak about those specific details in regards to populations and their ethnic origin and whatnot. But again, because anti-whites are so slimy and they're always trying to slander us, right? Again, doesn't matter how innocent you are. You can be on a spectrum. You can be the most evil. You can be the most innocent. All right. They're just anti-white. They don't care. All the same, they'll try to paint us all the same in the same box as the anti-white bad guy. The bad guy within the anti-white narrative. The racist, as they like to call it. And they'll even, again, lie about it. Judges will lie about it in court cases to try to frame you as a bad guy in the anti-white narrative, because that's how slimy anti-whites are. That's how bad they try to slander you and defame you. That they don't even care about justice or legal procedure or order, law, anything. To them, being anti-white comes first and foremost. So again, that second takeaway, that second lesson from that is, don't let them have little things like that. Instead, I'm not going to keep going on talking openly about non-white immigration and ending non-white immigration, because I know now that anti-whites are that slimy, that corrupt, that even judges will lie about that and try to use that to twist your character and defame you. And judges are supposed to be people who uphold justice, not corrupt anti-whites, not corrupt bigots, alright, slandering innocent people. So from now on, I'm just going to say anti-white immigration. Anti-white immigration. Try to twist that, anti-whites. Alright? Try to what non-white group is called anti-white? Where did these people come from? Oh, nowhere. It's ideology. It's a way of thinking. It doesn't matter what race they are. Or any race of people could be anti-white. In fact, there's a lot of white anti-whites. So it's got nothing to do with talking about non-whites. Alright? But again, the judge is trying to justify this lie, this hop, like kangaroo-like hop in the court, because I spoke about something anti-white and I specifically referred to it as non-white immigration. So just because I used a certain word when referring to a legal policy, okay, not people at all, not populations, talking about policies and laws on a political platform, the judge thought they could twist it and lie and say that I was talking about non-white people just because of the word non-white. So that's two takeaways. Anti-whites, they're Doesn't matter, like, they don't follow the law. They don't care about anything. They don't care about justice or righteousness or doing the good, true, right thing. They just care about being anti-white bigots filled with hatred. Or slander innocent people for no reason but to be hateful and to justify and to promote and to put effort towards their promotion of white erasure and the destruction of Western kind. So just nasty, nasty people. Evil. Actually evil. And then secondly, even just little words, using words, speaking about policies. They'll try to twist it and frame you as the bad guy in the anti-white narrative. Even in court cases. Okay? Not just on forums or in Twitter feeds or whatever. And YouTube comment sections. They'll actually lie in the freaking courts. Apparent professionals. Because they're anti-white. And it will be over words. Individual words that you can just swap out and use other words, and it makes it 100 times, 1,000 times harder for them to try to raid you, take all your computers, literally all your data, all your files, everything, okay? And then put you through a kangaroo court of anti-whites and condemn you for not being anti-white enough. Just using different words can be a game changer. So remember that. Go free of anti-whiteism and understand the correct lexicon in order to combat the psychological warfare of anti-white abuse. Take it easy.